To talk more about this, Dr. Ebru Salcioglu joins me from Istanbul. She's a behavioral therapist and clinical researcher specializing in anxiety and psychological trauma. Doctor, thank you so much for speaking to us. Just take us through some of the mental health issues that will present among the communities affected by what's happened.
Well, so many millions are affected by this earthquake, both physically and psychologically, and at any age level, adults, adolescents, and children. So there will be traumatic stress reactions in response to exposure to earthquakes and losses it caused. People are exposed to devastation and some grotesque scenes and people who are dead and trapped under the rubble. So these will have lingering effects on people's psychological health. So we'd expect some people to recover from these effects on their own. But many other will continue to experience difficulties, psychological difficulties in the long run. And the first of which, as I said, will be probably post-traumatic stress reactions. They will be re-experiencing the earthquake in the form of thoughts, memories, and sometimes images and nightmares. They will be distressed upon reminders of the earthquake. They will be psychologically and physically reactive to such reminders, such as sights of the rubble, and when the rubble are taken out, the empty spaces of the buildings that once stood there. They will have probably avoidance of many reminders of the earthquakes, as well as thoughts and memories of it. So hypervigilance, exaggerated startle responses are among the other problems that we'll be seeing. Mm-hmm. The primary emotion will be fear. So many people will continue to be afraid of other earthquakes happening, but they will be also afraid of other reminders of the earthquake, even though they do not pose any further threat to their safety. So fear will be prominent in the coming mm-hmm. months and even years.
And Doctor, what kind of treatment have you worked on to help earthquake survivors in particular, especially here in Turkey?
Well, after the 1999 earthquakes in Turkey, we set up a large-scale project to deliver psychological treatment services to earthquake survivors. What we came up with was a mental health care model. And this model was based on psychological treatments that were shown to be effective in the recovery of traumatic stress responses, as well as traumatic grief reactions. So we need a mental health care model for effective dealing with this kind of problem, because many people will need psychological treatment in the long term. But meeting such a demand is very difficult, because addressing this scale of demand requires interventions that are reachable by people, so reachable and effective at the same time. So what we need, a mental health care model that involves interventions that are based on sound theory. They need to have a sound theoretical basis. They need to be proven to be effective through studies, clinical trials. They need to be brief so that they can easily be delivered. They need to be also easily delivered to therapists themselves. We need to train therapists easily in the delivery of these interventions. Mm-hmm. And we need to be able to deliver this treatment through other media. Today it is easy because we have internet and smartphones and applications on these phones, so it is easier. So the kind of treatment that we developed actually was based on these principles, and we conducted studies with hundreds of earthquake survivors in Turkey, and we were able to show that a brief behavioral intervention focusing on fear and increasing sense of control on survivors is effective in dealing the traumatic stress reactions of earthquake survivors in Turkey.
And Doctor, when we talk about the survivors of this particular earthquake, it's not just the survivors having to go through this. The whole country is living through this, especially those who have lived through the 1999 earthquake that was here in Western Turkey. How do people, though, start to heal and work through that? Because you talk about the fear, there's the grief, and those two emotions, it's not about getting over it, it would be about getting through it. And this is now something that the country as a whole has to get through.
This is such a correct point you made. Not only the survivors in the region are affected by this earthquake, but those survivors of the past earthquakes as well are affected deeply. And many people, of course, living in Istanbul are also affected because they are now afraid of another an earthquake that is going to happen here in the city, and which is said to cause devastation and large-scale casualties. So many people are in this country are experiencing fear, have sleeping problems, probably are having nightmares at night. They are also hypervigilant, and they wait for another for an earthquake to happen. So well, we have to come up with earthquake preparedness efforts, definitely, to deal effectively with large-scale disasters in this country. And these preparedness efforts should not only include physical preparedness, but psychological preparedness as well. So, for example, for people who wait for an earthquake to happen in Istanbul, psychological preparedness will be very important, because during an earthquake, we need to be able to take the necessary cautions to protect ourselves in case of a collapse of a building, or, you know, when it comes to go outside and protect ourselves and our children. So we need to remain calm and deal with our fear effectively, so that we can take the necessary self-protective measures.
Yeah, and it's
for those for the other survivors living in other parts of the country, namely the western part of Turkey, which survived the 1999 earthquakes. Some of the traumatic reactions of people will definitely recur, so they need to be able to perhaps overcome their fear once again through psychological therapy or other means.
Yeah, so important right now to not just be physically prepared, but mentally too, for all the adversities that life can throw at you. Dr. Salcioglu, thank you so much for speaking to us and your expertise on this matter.